Now, I think this is a rather interesting comparison in the knobs of, what I'm talking about with my this here being a masculine fertility plummet stone, because this here is clearly a masculine it's, they call them ringed pestles, but they're actually pestles with a big phallic end on them. This is my 2-footer here. But anyway, I'm going to make that comparison one more time here to see what you think. Now, don't these two things here have an awful similar look about them? I think so. Now, don't think of these little things as being, the way most men of Judeo-Christian heritage or tradition appear. I think more like the uncircumcised variety. I think I forgot to show these earlier, but here's a couple of more with a very distinctive feminine type end on them, very feminine, sexually feminine groove on the end of them. And there's nothing else. I mean, it's not like you could have used that thing to hang them somehow. I mean, it's just, they're just in there. Okay, now here's another one, smaller. Okay, and it's got this drilled hole up at the top. Now I know there's 50,000 people out there going, oh, it's a sinker, it's a fishing sinker. Oh, horse pucky, you are not going to put that amount, once again, you just go ahead and go out there and peck and grind one of these things out of here. Drill a stinking hole through it like that. Then go out there and use it as a fishing sinker or net weight that gets lost the first time. I mean, you got to remember, their nets weren't nylon nets. They were little cordage nets. And those things, you would tear holes in it the first time you snagged them on something, leaving your days long made little thing right here on the bottom of it. Now, in my opinion, there's just no doubt this is another charm stone worn around the neck, and you can't really see it as well as educated fingers can absolutely find that there's a little groove that runs completely around the end of it, end to end, down this, two sides of this thing, too. Now, something else, okay, on that subject. Maybe this line right up here that's ground in there was not ground to hang it. Maybe they hung it from this thing here. Because I forget his name, but I think it was Father Crespi. In his journals, he was one of the very first guys to get up and actually see real life, very first missionaries into California. And he actually saw Chumash ceremonies live. And he said, he testified that all his journals say that these things here were made in sets of 16. Okay, now see what I have here. Now this is just to kind of point out real quick why anyone who was doubting me on this one up here that had that quartz that was built around, shaped around where a quartz inclusion line in it was, where he eventually put a groove, pecked in a groove. Look at what I have here. Another one with the quartz inclusion line virtually identically placed in the thing. Meaning to me, they shaped this whole thing to get that quartz inclusion, both of these things, to get the quartz inclusion lines right there. Now, something else, okay, on that subject. Maybe this line right up here that's ground in there was not ground to hang it. Maybe they hung it from this thing here. Because you know, I forget his name, but I think it was Father Crespi. In his journals, he was one of the very first guys to get up and actually see real life, very first missionaries into California, and he actually saw Chumash ceremonies live. And he said, he testified that all his journals say that these things here were made in sets of 16. And in one of these nighttime ceremonies around this great big fire, the shaman came out and laid these things down in a circle around the fire ring. And he said everyone began to sing and do this wild chant and stuff, and they just sat there like transfixed, not doing anything but singing and chanting. And then he says every single one of these things got up, stood up, unassisted, on its own, and began to dance. Kind of an interesting thing that Father Crespi said about these plummets that got up and danced is they had headdresses. That the Charmstones all had little feathered headdresses sticking up. Like a you think of an Indian chief bonnet, you know. Now, that's something that, like, I think, well, maybe that's like a place where they tied a headdress on, feather headdress. He said there was no persons remote, even near it, that could have been affecting it with a string like a little puppet in the puppet shows or anything like that. He says, no doubt about it, that it was the devil, brother. That was the way he took it. One of the thousands of reasons they just thought the poor Chumash were absolutely devils-infested folks and treated them so horribly because of it. But now, it also says that as soon as this thing got up and started dancing, the entire crowd started cheering and hooping and hollering, and they all went into this big dance festival too and danced around the fire for hours. Now, I think it's worth noting that the primary concoction that these people drank for visions and vision quests and ceremonies and stuff like that was a rather powerfully hallucinogenic brew called Toloache, made from the Toloache plant. And I suspect that old Father Crespi, or whatever his name had been taking little sips out of the Toloache cup that was getting passed around, because that's kind of the thing you'd have done, everyone ceremonially taking a drink out of the bowl. Well, I'll bet you he had a couple of sips to it, and it's entirely possible that his eyeballs were starting to have the old hallucinogenic, bobbing around and flickering, which, will make something like this at a bit of a distance and just actually seem like it could get up and dance for you. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the subject here. Now, split-second shout-out to the Tribe of Benjamin, who gave me this thing here years ago, and I continue to use it on virtually every video, everything from shaking it at my dog to stop him barking, I don't know what all, I mean, a dozen uses. I love it. Thanks again, Ben. Okay, anyway, Pestle Brain out, as a lot of my FB buddies call me, knowing I'm Pestle Man, but want to call me Pestle Brain because there's kind of a little bit of a double entendre there, This is not really so nice.